Hey, everybody, welcome to The Thirsty Professional. This is a place where we grab a bevy, we ditch the BS, and we get real about careers, purpose, and passion. I'm your host, Beth Ann Campbell, or also go by Beth, former corporate queen who traded in my crown for creative badassery. I'm also the author of the award winning Where the Hell is My Bacon? If you're watching live, let us know you're here in the comments, where you're from, and most importantly, what are you drinking? I got my bacon cup here today. If you're watching the replay, please give us a hashtag replay. And of course, make sure to let us know if you have any questions or feedback so we can address it during the live stream or maybe on a future episode. And just a reminder, we do have a bit of a delay. So we can't see you unless you comment. So I would love everybody, if you're comfortable, to comment and just let us know that you're here. And also, if you make a comment on something that we say during the show, it's so helpful if you put a little context if it's not clear, because sometimes people will be like, right on. And, 5 minutes later, we get to the comment and we don't know what it means. So much appreciated. All right, on to the juice. Today, my very special guest on The Thirsty Professional is Willie Nicol. Willie is a personal growth and mindset coach for men. He spent over 3 decades as a police officer in Scotland and then another 7 years in corporate security before being unexpectedly made redundant. So many of us can relate to that. After deciding to step completely away from law enforcement and security environment, Willie, with the encouragement of his wife, set up a business as a personal development and mindset coach. He now coaches men who are stressed, burned out, stuck, or just lost and helps them get their lives and mojo back. We're going to learn about his journey and talk lots about men's mental health today. But for now, please help me welcome Willie Nicol. Willie, welcome to The Thirsty Professional.
Many thanks, Beth. It's a great pleasure to be here.
I'm just so happy. I've been looking forward to having you on this show ever since we met. We chatted back in December, and we're going to get to that because I do want to talk a little bit about how we met. But first, Willie, are you drinking anything today? Do you have a bevy?
Much to my wife's disgust, I'm drinking Diet Coke.
Oh, hey, no shame in that. I love Diet Coke, or we have Coke Zero over here, which is I think a little sweeter. But yeah, you know what? Good for you. No shame in any game. It's no worse than my coffee with hot chocolate. So there you go. So Willie, you and I met on. I want to just give a shout out to the Founders Network because you and I are members of the Founders Network, and that's how we met. And I do want to give a little bit of a shout out because I did a count yesterday, and over half of my guests that I from January until where I'm booked right now, which is out through May, have come from the Founders Network networking calls, including yourself. So I want to shout out to Rudy Abraham and Albert Atkins. They are the founders and they do such a great job of running this program. And I'm going to put a link in the comments after the show so people can go and check it out because the quality of people and there are a lot of people, but they do such a great job running their networking calls and the group that we have that's hosted on school. So I just wanted to throw a little shout out to them because well, Willie, I know you've even had a lot of conversations and been some guests based on the people you've met through this group as well.
Very much so, Beth. I met Rudy through another networking group, and he asked me if I would join the Founders Network, which I was happy to do. And I have to say, I have been amazed by the depth and breadth of the community uh, from all points, north, south, east, and west. And I have met many people as a result of that. In fact, your good self, Heidi Medina, I'm talking to the lovely Seamus Corey next week,
Oh.
and it's been a great experience, and I'm learning as I go.
Yeah, it is. It is always an experience. I haven't been doing the networking calls for that long. But I was invited to Founders Network by Miss Heidi Medina, who was my first guest on the show, and I'm going to have Seamus Corey on in I think he's in coming on in May. So for anybody out there who is looking for a really great networking group, membership group, like I said, I'll put a link in the comments and you can check it out because it's so awesome. All right. Well, Willie, we've got so much to talk about. I don't see any comments coming in, but I'm guessing that is because there's just delays happening. So I'm sure those will start popping in. I'll get a slew of them at some point. Hopefully no glitches because I do love the audience interaction. But you are my special guest, and I do want to talk about a lot of things. Starting off with so you have this great journey where you went from law enforcement police officer to coach, but I want to start with the law enforcement, the police officers part. So you were a police officer for 31 years. Can we just talk a little bit first? Like, what did you do? Did you have a certain area where you like, forensics or, you know?
I would like to say I was multi-talented, but I did a lot of I performed a lot of different roles, starting off as a uniformed officer, plainclothes officer, detective officer, special branch officer, intelligence management officer. So I had a quite a varied career with a lot of ups and downs and interesting inquiries.
Did you get into law enforcement? Was this something that, legacy in the family, or was it just something that how did you even get in?
No legacy in the family. I trained or studied to be a lawyer, and at
Oh,
university, I eventually gained a degree, which wasn't a very good degree because university, as you probably well know, is full of distractions. And
yeah.
I allowed myself to be
We shall just
distracted.
let that one sit. Yes, yes.
I want to elaborate. So when I eventually graduated, I was unable to secure a position in a law firm, which is the process you go through, called an apprenticeship, before you can become a lawyer, then move on from there. And I thought, what will I do? And I was due to be married in about a year's time from the graduation, and I went into sales,
Wow.
which I didn't like.
What?
Yes, I know, I know. It's a nice, good company, but
Yeah.
wasn't enjoying it. And someone suggested look at the police, and I dismissed that idea. But eventually, think grow up. You're about to be a married man, get a job. So
Right.
I,
Adulting.
I, I looked at it, and eventually I joined the police.
That's awesome. I'm just going to real quick here because I'm not seeing any comments come through, and I know a bunch of people are joining. I'm going to just real quick here. I'm going to pull up in LinkedIn and see if they're coming in there, just to make sure. Sometimes Restream does not cooperate, and I just want to make sure if we do have any comments coming through that I can see them. And thank you guys for your patience. We had so many good. All right. I'm not seeing anything yet. Okay. All right. We'll just keep going. Okay. So I wanted to talk a little bit about as far as you being a police officer. Now you're a coach and you help men who are stressed out, burned out. Can you take me back to when you were in law enforcement and the culture of law enforcement as you experienced it when it was happening, kind of in the context of mental health? I mean, I imagine there was a lot of burnout and stress, PTSD.
Well, I'm showing my age off here, but I joined the police nearly 45 years ago. Um, I was obviously only 12 at the time, but
Well,
uh, it was a very macho uh, organisation.
yeah.
There were very few female officers at the time. It was tough. You couldn't show any weakness. You were up against some really bad people, and all you had to rely on was your quick wits and your colleagues. So mental health wasn't really a thing. Um, we didn't articulate ideas like stress. No, it was stressful, that's for sure. But
Yeah.
stress, no, we didn't admit to stress. We didn't admit to feeling bad or feeling poorly or whatever. You just kind of put your shoulders back and go on with it. But that wasn't only true of the police. It was true of the male gender at the time, where men were men and they were expected to be the strong, silent type.
Sure.
Um,
Man up, you know.
Man up, big
Yeah.
boys don't cry, don't show your emotions, just get on with things. And it was probably worse in the place because of the nature of the job. But that was the general kind of sign of the times that men just were
What
quiet.
What were some of the ways that you and your colleagues dealt with that kind of stress? I mean, was it I mean, did you have anything, or was it just bottle it up and
Well, you talk about bottle. Yeah, we generally went to the pub.
yeah,
There was quite a camaraderie. We played sports, rugby, football, or soccer, as you guys would say, and then we'd go to the pub. But you would share experiences within the group to a limited extent, because again, you didn't want to appear weak in front of your colleagues.
yeah.
So there was no critical incident debriefing or no stress management techniques or nothing like that. It was all done over a few beers, which probably wasn't the healthiest thing to do, but it kind of got you through.
I know that you, when we talked in our one-on-one, you mentioned also, sometimes using sort of dark humor, which, humor is such a great thing. I mean, even in its darkest form, but it is such a thing that we resort to sometimes when we don't have anything else.
Very, very humour, yes, and I subscribe to that to this day. Life is very, very dull if you don't have a bit of humour.
Right.
Our humour was by necessity dark because we dealt with a lot of dark situations, which you try to lighten a bit by using humour, some of which was quite inappropriate, um,
Yeah.
but it got you through.
Was there any a particularly dark time in that 31 years that stands out to you?
Well, how long have you got? Um,
Yeah.
without being too maudlin, there was a lot of death,
Yeah.
either natural causes or unnatural causes. There was a lot of unpleasantness delivering messages to people whose friends, colleagues, relatives, whatever had died. Um, the Yes, there were a lot of dark times, but it was your job. It was your function
Yeah.
to do that. So we
Is
just
is there
just got on with
yeah,
it.
go. Is there anything that you're most proud of from that time? I mean, I imagine that it's probably just a weird dynamic of you've got all this, of course, just by nature, you're experiencing all of this stress and trauma and these horrible things, but also you're probably helping people too. And well, I know you are helping people. So is there anything that sticks out as like a sense of pride?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we were called a police service. We were a public service, not a police force. A police service that
Yeah.
people get often get confused. So one of your primary functions was to help people,
Yeah.
keep them safe, protect them from harm, um, give them a hand, so to speak. I remember one occasion where uh, an elderly lady dialed the emergency police number. 111, I guess, in the States. It was 999 here.
And 911. Yeah.
And I rocked up to her house and she had me change a light bulb because she couldn't do it herself, which I was happy to do.
Oh,
And then had to
cute.
kind of counsel her, say, the next time, don't dial the emergency number, please.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was just a little aside. But certain certain situations arose when you were able to help and make a big difference to people,
Yeah.
which was very gratifying.
Yeah, that's amazing. Just checking in, I did finally get a comment in from Stella. Thank you, Stella. We are experiencing a flux of time zones
Mm.
here because the northern North America basically went to daylight saving time last weekend, and Europe has not gone yet. So Stella has said that that's why she's late because of the time zones. I did try. I did put a post out, and I've tried to remind people that it's two, but it's this is why I hate daylight saving time. I don't know about you, Willie, but it's not my favorite thing.
Well, the where we live in Scotland, the idea is that we get more hours of daylight during the winter, right? Because it gets
It's
very
truth.
dark, right? So you
Yeah.
move the clocks back and forward. Uh, to me, it's just a pain in the neck, but
Yeah. Yeah, it's and somebody said, well, I love it because we have more daylight, and I said, you don't really have more daylight. You just have daylight later versus earlier, and but anyway, we will trudge on. It doesn't matter. I'm grateful that we have the wherewithal to work through these daylight saving time things. Okay, so Willie, I love the story of how you got into coaching. So can you tell us a little bit, how did you go from you're a cop, you're a security guard, you get made redundant, and I imagine at that point you're maybe also considering maybe it's time to, retire or do something different. How did you get into coaching?
Well, 31 years in the police, I kind of fell into the security job, which was offered to me, and I took it. Um, Not a great decision on reflection, uh,
Why not? You were
because
there for 7 years, right?
yeah, because I was trying to find a way out. But when I was in my second marriage, I had a stepdaughter to put through college, new
Yeah.
house, mortgage, all that kind of financial pressure, and I stuck with it. But it wasn't always unpleasant. The culture in the company wasn't very pleasant. It was very profit orientated. It was like money, 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 make
Yeah.
money, profit, 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 to the detriment of the staff. And once I'd sorted all the security problems of which were my remit, they decided that they no longer needed me. Oh, sorry, they no longer needed my role. They were
Hmm.
quite insistent that I was a lovely person, but the role was no longer required because there was nothing to do apparently.
Yeah.
So they made me redundant, which caused me some discomfort. In fact, I was incandescent. I think it's the word. My wife, that you're like the Incredible Hulk. You're just about to burst out of your clothes because of your anger. However, the redundancy process was a 3 month thing, and she said, "What are you going to do?" And I went to look at other senior security jobs. And during one interview, the thought came into my head that I don't want to be doing this. I no
Hmm.
longer want to be in this environment. So what next? My wife, who'd done coaching training, said, why don't you look at coaching? Which I immediately dismissed as a lot of mumbo jumbo. Really, me coaching, I'm an ex-detective, right? I'm logical and analytical and evidence-based, and that's all a lot of nonsense.
Yeah.
So my wife, being much more clever than I am and more intuitive, booked me on a training course without telling me, and then
Oh, love it.
presented me with the fait accompli. You're going on this training course at X day. And again, an Incredible Hulk thing came out. So I said, okay, well, I'll go. I'll go. Okay, then you've paid for it. I'll go. Determined that I would debunk this
Hmm.
nonsense. So it's just a short course, 3 days, introduction to coaching. And at the end of the 3 days, I had changed my mind because I'd had a few light bulb moments and a few epiphanies, if that's the word. I thought there could be something in this. So eventually, when I was made redundant, I took the meagre redundancy payment and spent it on coaching training. And about 7 years ago, decided I better do something with this and set a business up with absolutely no business experience whatsoever. So it's been a learning curve ever since.
Oh, well, I love your wife. I'm completely in love with your wife. That she sounds amazing. If I had asked you 30 years ago when you were still working as a police officer, hey, what do you think about life coaching? What would you have said?
It's unprintable. Um, I would have told you to go somewhere. Uh,
Somewhere
well,
not nice.
a little funny story. That 7 years ago, I was walking into a venue to go to a networking event, and out walked a former colleague, Big Eddie,
Big
so called
Eddie.
because he was 6'6", right? And I'm 5'10", quite chunky as a rugby player, and he was like a drain pipe, like tall, skinny guy.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, this is not going to work. We
Oh
got on
boy.
famously well, and we made an odd couple walking about, with his head and shoulders above me, but we got things done. Anyway, fast forward now 30 years, whatever it is. And he said, "What are you doing now, Willie?" I said, "I've just set up a coaching business." At which he burst out laughing. And I thought, you cheeky bugger that you are, right? What's so
Yeah.
funny, Eddie? He said, "Willie, you coached me and I saw you coaching other people, but you didn't know you were doing it." And that I was quite taken aback by that. And
Wow.
it was the best backhanded compliment I've ever been paid. And when I look back at it, yeah, I did. When I was responsible for staff, I coached them. I didn't know I was doing it, but I was coaching them. Not so much in terms of personal development. Well, personal development, yeah. Mindset change, not so much. But I would always try to promote my staff, my crew, whenever the opportunity arose, which was often to my detriment because I'd get them trained up and they'd be really good. And they come to me and say, well, I want to move in this direction. Will you support
Hmm.
me? And I'd say, yes, certainly I'll support you. Then I'm going to lose this really good member of staff and I'm going to have to start again and train somebody else up. But I saw that as part of my function, right? People had helped me, promoted me, supported me. So there we go. And if that if that if that was called coaching, that was what I was doing. I'm just doing it formally under the correct name now.
Well, I think a lot of people do that. In fact, I dabbled in career coaching a little bit after I got made redundant and was trying to find myself. And it was the same thing. At one point, one day I just had an epiphany, and I thought, I've been coaching people. I've been helping them through whatever their burnout, stress, things, but just not formally, just like you said. Um, but I also think too that what you did, Willie, you probably didn't recognize it at the time, but that's good leadership when you are just supporting and you're helping people to become their best. That's the risk you take, but that's good leadership, right? I mean, that's exactly what
Well,
you did.
again, I probably wouldn't articulate it in that manner, but you're absolutely correct. Um, part of being a manager or a leader or whatever is to make sure that those you're leading or managing
Yeah.
operate to the best of their ability. Um, and I was quite surprised, yet delighted to find that a lot of the skill sets and training I had during my police career, and to a limited extent the corporate security career, were transferable into life coaching because I thought, well, that's that. This is now never the twain shall meet.
Yeah.
But not true.
Do you find, and now that you have been coaching for a while, and outside of maybe big eddies that you meet randomly, do you find that men still are generally resistant to this concept of mindset coaching or even coaching at all, life coaching?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. When I put my LinkedIn header up, it was coaching with no psychobabble, right? No mumbo jumbo, straight talking, and getting you from where you are now to where you want to be. Men are quite resistant to opening up. That's a very broad generalisation, and I post on LinkedIn frequently about it's okay to ask for help. Right? It's not a sign of weakness. It's not a sign of incompetence or inability. It's a sign of strength, actually, and clarity of
Absolutely.
thought when you've identified, look, this isn't going right for me. I've tried to fix it myself. I need some help with this. Whether it be stress, burnout, overthinking, lack of motivation, yada, yada, yada. It's when you
Yeah.
think, I need help. And the thing about it is, Beth, we ask for help every day. We go to the mechanic when our car's not working. You have toothache, you go to a dentist. When the heel falls off your shoe, you go to the local cobbler. These are things that you either can't do yourself or not properly, right? So you ask for help, and that's okay. But talking about personal shit, no, not so much.
Well, it's really interesting because you're making me think of women. Women we talk a lot lately about our inner voice or inner critic and being imposter syndrome, self sabotage, right? So it's almost like sort of similar that men are. Do you, maybe I'll ask you? Do you think that men are their own worst enemy when it comes to mental health? Sometimes in the context that we're talking about here.
Yes, they can be. They can be their own worst enemy in a lot of areas. Um, but the inability or unwillingness or refusal to accept something's not working, something's not going right, and that will ultimately impact in your mental well-being because if left unaddressed, it'll only get worse. But
Yeah.
we'd rather bite our own arm off than ask someone to help us. So that's how bad it is. I think it's becoming better now. There's
Yeah.
a greater understanding of mental well-being and the usefulness of talking to someone. I mean, th- I had a conversation with a lady coach the other day there, and she said women have a kind of support group, right? They'll talk about family, whatever, right? Men go to the pub and talk about soccer, right? And
It's
that's it,
true. Yeah.
right? Soccer. And some groups I've been a member, right? We don't talk about religion. We don't talk about politics. We'll only talk about soccer, right? And nothing else. So mental well-being, what's that? So it's a closed mindset, if you like. It's a blinkered approach, and inevitably you go to the bar. You meet some. How you doing? Oh, I'm doing great. And I
Yeah.
can now sense it screaming out them that something's not right. And I didn't have to be a trained detective to work that out. But hey, if that's the way you want to play it, fair enough.
Why do you think that do you think it's more conditioning? Because of course there's, is it nature nurture? Is it more conditioning, or is it just this is the nature of men, that men tend to be, focus and,
I think
block out the stuff so I can get to the tiger kind of a
I
evolutionarily.
think conditioning is a very good way of putting it. For example, my late father was just old enough to be called up to serve in the military at the end of the Second World War. Again, showing my age off. Um, so he was in the army, right? And even apart from that, his generation were of a very fixed mindset when it came to showing emotion, i.e., you didn't, or showing affection, or God forbid, letting your feelings out or complaining, right? So a manly handshake or a pat in the back was about as intimate as men got, right? There was none of this Italian kissing each other on the cheek nonsense, right? So yes, you do get you look at your father and think, well, that's the way to go, yeah. And then you have your what I'd say in coaching your map of the world. What do other people do? And inevitably, the male side of things, it was we keep quiet, we don't complain, we don't open up. So that conditioning was familial, if you like, and also kind of universal outside, because no one wants to be a crybaby. No one wants to show that any sign that they're not coping well. So conditioning is exactly it. It's becoming a lot better now, where mental well-being is accepted as a thing, whereas back in the day, mental well-being, no idea.
Yeah, what's that? Yeah. I think you made such a really interesting and great point about the conversations that men have versus women, because you're absolutely right. And I'm sure the women in your life tell you this, and you're now experiencing it as you evolve. But we sometimes don't ask for help, but we always have our network, our social network, to go and talk about it and vent and get support, right? And then you guys go, and I know this because I know this is what my husband does. He goes and he hangs out with his brother, and they talk about sports and stuff. So it's a really good point. So all
Yeah,
you guys out there, next time you're having a conversation with your friend, maybe take it a little
it's
deeper.
it's it's probably it's not going to happen with your friends, right?
Yeah.
Maybe in the privacy of your family. That's why it's important to have an independent voice or independent listener who has no, if you like, skin in the game in terms of I won't judge you. It's not my place to judge you. I'm not here to criticize you. I'm here to help you. But the
Yeah.
fear of judgment, or the fear of criticism, the fear, basically, it's fear. We're afraid as chaps as being seen as weak, incompetent, whatever it is. We are afraid of others judging us in that way. We're afraid that if we open up, bad things will happen. Well, guys, opening up, good things will happen.
Yeah, and not opening it up because sometimes bad things happen too. I just want to check in real quick with the comments here because we have some folks coming in. So Eileen Pizzy is here. She said she just got home from confession and now making coffee. That's awesome. Her bevy of choice coffee in there in New Jersey. Stella Scott says, "Great wife," as to your wife. I agree. That was insightful of your colleague, who your I think it was Big Eddie that made the comment to you. And then Stella says, I love that very practical comparison with coaching and asking for help with your shoes, the garden, or anything. Goes for physical health too. The tendency to not take care of the body, but the car. Oh, oh my, must be catered to right away. Such a great point, Stella. And I know some men out there who shall remain nameless who will, under penalty of death, never go to the doctor unless they absolutely have to. But boy, oh boy, their cars are spotless and their cars are well maintained. So it's probably a very similar
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. It's the garden's neat and tidy, the car's shiny. And whether it's a distraction or whether it's displacement activity, or I would sooner polish my car than admit I've got a mental health problem.
Yeah. Well, you're working to change that. We had a quote in one of our promos from Doris Walsh. You know Doris,
Yeah,
and she said, "Looking forward to this conversation. These discussions that help break the stigma around vulnerability and mental health, especially for men in high pressure roles." So, in your experience as a coach, do you find that it's mostly the stereotypical high pressure roles, or is it pretty ubiquitous these days?
ubiquitous. Yes, it's across the board. And you mentioned the word vulnerability, which gets a very bad rap. No one wants to
Yeah.
be vulnerable or perceived to be vulnerable. Can I just tell you that vulnerability is a strength? Yeah. You can open up and admit you don't know everything. You can't do everything. You are not suited to that role. And if that makes you look vulnerable, oh, that's weak. We can't show that. Now, if one of my staff would come up to me and say, do you know about this? Now, as a leader, as a manager, the knee jerk reaction, yeah, 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 I know all about that. Yeah, yeah. Or make some shit up, right? Admit you don't, right? If that makes you look vulnerable, so what? So I say, no, I don't know that. And they'll look at you and say, oh my goodness, well, he's only human. He doesn't know everything, right? And you establish that bond. So then you could say, well, would you be kind enough to go and find out and come back and tell me? Or, well, let's go and find out ourselves. You and I will go and find this thing out, and then we'll both know. How's that sound? And you've created that rapport, you've created that opening by what some people would say be showing weakness, but actually you've got the strength to say, no, I don't know, I can't do that. Let's go and sort it out together. And people like that. They will empathize with that rather than, yeah, yeah, either brush them off, talk some bullshit, and they'll go be thinking, he's full of shit, that guy, right? So vulnerability is not a bad thing.
You are so singing my song because I wrote down as you were talking, I wrote vulnerability equals trust. I don't know equals trust. And this is something that I've recognized in my corporate world as well, that when you try to filter, you try to pretend like you know because for whatever reason, right? Your ego, whatever conditioning, and people know that you don't know. It's it builds such a better trust and like you said a bond when you just say I don't know, I don't have the answer, but let's find it, try to figure it out, right? It's the irony of I have to be and women do this too, but it's I have to know everything and I have to give you always have the answer because I can't show any weakness. But the truth is when you show that vulnerability and you say I don't know, it builds trust. It builds its authenticity. It's you're so singing my song, Willie.
Exactly. Authenticity, honesty. Uh, You're,
Yeah,
hon-
yeah.
you're honest enough to admit, I don't know
Yeah.
that, right? You're telling the truth. And this is quite a while ago. I think it's no coincidence that the words trust and truth are five-letter words, both beginning with TRU, right? So trust
Oh,
and truth are inextricably connected, if you like. If you tell the truth, people will trust you, right?
yeah.
And if they trust you, that leads on to greater things. If you don't tell the truth, people sense it and think you're full of shit. I'm not engaging with you. I'm not trusting you. Blah blah blah. So it's something to think about.
Yeah, I used to say that when people, as far as leadership goes, when people trust you, they'll follow you to the ends of the earth. They won't ask. You don't have to ask them to go the extra mile. They will just do it because they trust you and they believe in you. But when you're out there, just sort of, yeah, distancing yourself and barking orders and stuff, sometimes that doesn't go the right way. Certainly, I mean, probably some situations that's necessary, but certainly where in my world, in the general world of working men and women out there, it doesn't really work. Stella says it's more common for men to commit suicide because of this suppression of emotions.
Yes.
What do you think about that? Yeah, I don't know the statistics, but it
I
seems
don't know if
intuitively.
that's something sticks in my mind saying that men are 4 or 5 times more likely to commit suicide than women. And that goes back to the what we talked about. You ladies have your support group, you meet up for a coffee, have a natter, whatever it is. I think there's a lot to do with the mothering thing. You know, where you have kids, you've got to look after somebody, not yourself. So the the tendency is we'll share, right? Men don't, right? We're back to that's an extreme example where it gets to the point that they don't see a way out. Right?
Yeah.
It's got to the bottom of the black hole, and that's the only remedy. If that's not the right word, but that's the only way out. And I have coached or dealt with men in that situation, and I have had to deal with it as a police officer on the aftermath, if you like, and it's extremely unpleasant for everyone that's left. But to get to that point where you don't see any other alternative, it's tragic.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me, because you're so right. And I think for women it's both a nature and a nurture thing. We both everybody gets conditioning that's probably not great that we have to work on as human beings. But one of the things that women do, I think both evolutionarily as well as upbringing, is we are encouraged to be social. We are encouraged to, and I think evolutionarily, because we are traditionally the caretakers, the nurturers, the gatherers, we would, sit around with other women and children while the men would be out, getting the woolly mammoth. And you add on top of that now the conditioning of don't let your emotions show, don't show weakness, and just focus. And but you're absolutely right. Doris Walsh says, from Brene Brown, author Brene Brown, vulnerability is not winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up and be seen when you have no control over the outcome. Oh, I love that. That is
Very
great.
insightful, yeah.
Yeah. And Seamus has joined us. Hey, Seamus, two of my favorite people. Apologies for being late. That's okay. I think the time zone is screwing everybody up. He says you're smashing it. You two, high fives. Well, thank you, Seamus. It's so easy when you have great guests with great stories and willing to open up about these kinds of things. And then Doris says this is where we need to educate everyone on emotional literacy. Okay, I like it. All right, so back to you, Willie. I want to know, in your coaching, what are some of the common reasons that your clients talk to you about why they're getting burned out or feeling lost? Are there any themes that run through there, or is it kind of all over the place?
Well, a lot was down to the macho thing, where yeah, I'll get through this. I'll make this work. Yeah, I'm tired. Yeah, I'm exhausted. No, no, I'll push through. And I'll be honest, I had an episode of that when I worked in the corporate security game, where I was working long hours, traveling long distances, and determined that I would keep up with the younger guys. And as a result, I had to take 2 months off work because I was unwell. And I didn't know anything about burnout at that time. Um, and I developed a virus called Bell's palsy, which causes your face to collapse.
Yes,
So
yeah,
I went home from work one day and my wife thought I'd had a stroke. And I wasn't slurring my words, I wasn't feeling very well. And I come home early from work, which is unlike me because I was a workaholic. And straight to hospital, straight into a room, the tests and whatnot. And by this time, I was naturally just a tad concerned, um, to put it mildly, until a more senior medic appeared and told me that I'd contracted Bell's palsy, which I didn't know, and she explained it to me. But essentially, this virus will attack you when your immune system is at a low ebb, i.e., you're burnt out. So your immune system's low and you're susceptible to whatever, right?
yeah.
Bloody hell, right? Okay. So I took time off work and I grew a beard to cover up my lopsided face. It wasn't pretty. And eventually, it got back to as approaching normality as possible. And I shaved the beard off. And that was another wake up call because I thought, no, I'm not working 60 hours, 70 hours a week. Right. I only get paid for 40, which um, really grated with my value of fairness. Right. One of my core values, and I can talk about values later. And I stopped doing the extra work. I said, I'm not doing it. And I would urge anyone who's being imposed upon by their bosses to work more than they should be working to learn in a polite way to say no. set boundaries and say, no, if it's affecting your mental or physical well-being, it's time to take stock. So I speak from some experience, but everyone, I think, doesn't want to admit they're not coping well. And it's particularly true of men. And back to the old trope,
Yeah.
men don't like to admit that they're struggling. That yeah, I can do that. I can take that on. Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. And I think probably, and this is just supposition on my part, probably inside them is a little voice going, fucking say no, right? Say no. Stop. You're killing yourself. This is not a good thing. Right? But again, they choose to ignore it.
I think it's you just said something that really it was interesting to me too that I think is probably a partly a factor here. Correct me if I'm wrong from your experience, but and I think another thing that advantage that women have in this area is that we tend to recognize in other women very easily because of this social connection, I think, and whatever reason, evolution, whatever conditioning, we tend to recognize in other women when they're not at their best, when there is a problem. I don't know if men recognize it, but I would wager that they probably aren't unless you have a really good relationship. But again, it's you don't want to rock the boat and I don't want to embarrass the person. So they probably don't speak out and say, hey, Willie, you seem a little off. What's going on? Let's talk about it, right? Is am I onto something here?
Yes, you are indeed. I don't want to embarrass that person by asking them, are you okay? Right, that'd be embarrassing. Because they might tell me to fuck off and say you're just a nosy so and so, just bugger off, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so that reluctance to pose the question is what holds men back about asking about other men's health, right? Or they might think none of my business, right? If he wants to talk, he'll talk. And then my riposte that would you talk? Would you open up? No. Well, why would you expect the other guy to open up? Right? So yes, there is. We're back to I don't want to ask him if he's okay in case he gets embarrassed or he gets annoyed or gets angry or whatever. So I'll just keep myself to myself. Like we say, how you doing, mate? Oh, I'm great, thanks. And you
Yeah.
go, really? Now, okay, my detective skills, I can detect that. My
Yeah.
coaching skills, I can detect. You can tell by body language. You can tell by facial expressions. You can tell by a lot of things, right? That something ain't going right. But if the other party does not want to play, right,
Yeah, exactly. So it's this
in the
vicious
game,
circle. Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
there's not what you can do. The old you can lead a horse to water and all that kind of malarkey.
Yeah.
So again, the conditioning men tend not to. They'll say, how you doing, mate, right?
Yeah.
But they don't expect an answer. Or they don't.
Right.
Well, actually, I'm feeling pretty shit, and I'm really struggling. Would you talk to me? And then fuck, why did I ask that?
Right.
Right?
Right. Am I
That was
prepared? Am I qualified to even
right.
have that conversation?
No, I wasn't expecting that. Right? It was just a polite "How you doing?" It's like want a beer. And then if someone does open up and boof, you go, bloody hell, right? Okay. Now in coaching, now if I say how are you, they boom, right?
Yeah.
They do the verbal vomit. I go, brilliant, breakthrough, right? Here we go,
Oh, really? Okay.
something to
Well,
work with, right? But backtracking to the trust, the truth, the authenticity is and to enable someone to have that faith in you, to allow them to permit themselves to open up and go, boom, right? That requires the base level of trust, authenticity, honesty, faith, whatever you want to call it, right? You have to establish that first, right, before anyone's going to open up to you. Because if they
yeah.
don't trust you, they are no way they're going to up and betray their deepest, darkest secrets. No matter if it's screaming inside them, just tell them. Like, no, 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 can't do that. So once that happens, so there have been occasions I've gone, Jesus Christ, really? Right? Inside, I don't say that out loud, right?
It's in your head.
Oh my God, right? Oh, geez, oh, right. But inside, I'm thinking, this is good. This is things to work on. They're as soon as they unburden you, you unburden yourself. It's a weight off your shoulders. All the figurative ways of looking at it. You will feel lighter if you get rid of this weight, right? This
Yeah.
baggage, this burden, whatever it is. You will feel lighter. You will feel
Yeah.
better. How about it? And that is sometimes just enough to get the dam broken, as it were, and they'll say, okay, fair enough, let's be honest, here's what's going on. And that's the starting point.
I think it's really interesting. I just love this because this dynamic because I don't get a lot of people in my network they're really focused on men, and it's so important. But you're making me think about when you made a comment about even when there's someone that they trust and or they have an established relationship with the coach, it takes a bit to get them. And whereas I can tell you with a lot of women that I know, as soon as you get a little inkling of somebody's ready, willing to listen of your girlfriends, boom, it's, you will sit out with a complete, my mother would get on a bus with complete strangers and just tell them her whole life. So I wanted to just, you made a comment about your core values. I'm curious. So can you tell us what are your core values?
How long have you got? Right. Uh,
Couple minutes. Give us the high
right.
level.
I learned this through coaching that most people, if not all people, have values, right? So value, not in money. Money is not a value, right?
Right.
Trust is a value. If you value trust, that makes trust a value to you, right?
Yeah.
Truth, loyalty, honesty, authenticity, right? And if you don't live by these values, which are kind of ingrained in you, right? Once you've compiled this list of values, if you don't live in accordance with the values, there'll be dis discomfort, right? There'll be grating, there'll be friction. If you do something that goes against your values, you don't feel well. If you stick to your values, and it's taken me a long time, let me tell you, because I wasn't always values based, right? If you stick to your values, you stick to your guns, you stick to what you believe to be right, your values, your beliefs, that this is the correct way to live, to work, to interact with other people, and hopefully in a nice, friendly, empathetic manner, right? That's good. If you start diverting from your values, your core values, and you can go online and you can find what they call a values elicitation exercise, right? Where you'll be given a list of values and you tick the ones that resonate with you. Yeah, I like that one. No, I'm not fussed about that one, right? And you can make a list of, say, 10, and then you can pair them up and go, is that one more than that one? Do I believe that one more than that one? And you can eventually distill it down to maybe 4 or 5 or 3. Right. So if I say trust, truth, authenticity, loyalty, honesty, there's 5. Right. If you're not honest with me, I'm not going to trust you. Right. If you're not authentic, I'll think you're full of shit. Right? And so on and so forth. Right. So once you've established this values list, if you like, you live by them. Because if you don't, you won't feel comfortable.
I'm going to look that up. Values elicitation exercise. So
Yes.
yeah, I like that. That's a great exercise for anybody to do. Um, did want to ask you too, Willie. So you've been doing this for 7 years, the coaching. Is there anything that surprises you that even when you started and you were kind of maybe getting into it, but is there anything that surprises you, good or bad, that you would have never imagined when you started?
Well, I alluded to it earlier that I never imagined that my detective training, my police training, the skill sets I developed there were transferable into coaching, which they absolutely are.
Yeah.
Listening
Did
skill.
that surprise you?
It did surprise me,
Yeah.
but in a pleasant way. It's a pleasant surprise. So
Yeah.
things like listening skills, asking the right questions, keeping quiet when you should shut up, right? Things like that I did as a detective when I was interviewing someone, and learning that giving people space, just they call it holding the space. I'm not all that fond of that. Holding space for them, right? Giving them somewhere to unburden themselves or just to sit in silence, right? That surprised me. Um, I've also been surprised, and I mentioned my lovely wife before, who is an energy healer, energy artist, and, and is involved in some things which hitherto I'd have said were complete woo woo, right? And now I've embraced some of that woo woo to my surprise,
Mm.
and I feel better for it. And I incorporate it into my coaching. I, the last thing I'll say about surprise, there are things happen during coaching that you can't explain. There's no explanation for them, which previously would have driven me insane, right? Because I want to know, how did that happen? Why did it happen? Well, we'll do this again. Blah. So things have happened, and I don't have time to articulate the instances that you think, my goodness, how did that happen? Right? That's weird. That's kind of spooky. And
Yeah.
so the only thing I would say to who sit in front of me when they ask me, how did that happen? I say, well, I don't really know. I'm being vulnerable, right, and honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you feel better? Yeah, I do feel better. Do things have things improved? Yeah, well, it's all good. We don't need to have an explanation for it. I sometimes, not being a particularly God-fearing man, although there is something out there, I sometimes equate it to there's a big chess player in the sky, right? We're all pieces of the chessboard, and we get moved about, and we sometimes don't know why or how or whatever. But you find yourself somewhere, or in some situations, you go, "How did I get here?" It's like how I became a coach. How did I become a coach? It was never
Yeah.
my intention to become a coach. I would have laughed at you 20 years ago if they said that. So the big man up there, or the big woman, the chess player, has moved me about the chessboard to put me where I am now.
Love it. And I will just ask this one kind of final, um, profound-ish question. What do you think that your coaching has taught you about you?
Oh gosh, that I feel like I'm more than the sum of my parts. That I've done things that I didn't believe I could do. Um, when someone says to you, "Thank you, Willie, you have helped me change my life," I am gobsmacked,
Mhm.
right? And my response is, I didn't change your life. You changed your life through our conversations or whatever we've done, right? You have changed your life because I can't change your life for you, right? I don't have, I'm going to pick up a little pen here. I don't have a magic big pen and go, abracadabra, change your life. No, our connection, our conversation has allowed you to think of ways in which you change your own life, which you weren't apparent to you, otherwise you wouldn't be coming talking to me.
Absolutely. Seamus says, "Willie, you are just so honest and authentic." So true. 100%. If you couldn't coach, what if today somebody said, "You know what? You can't coach anymore." What would you do? What would you be doing with your life?
I would be helping people in some other way. It's just looking back in my life, I have always had this almost compulsion to help people, right? It's always stick up for the wee guy. I always jump in when someone's being abused, physically or
Yeah.
mentally or whatever. Right? It's just been no, no, that's not right. Go back to one another of my core values is fairness. I don't like to see unfairness. I don't like to see people being treated unfairly, whether it be the people, a dog, and whatever it is. Life, unfortunately, life is inherently unfair. A lot of things go on which are unfair and over which we have no control, and we have to accept that. And acceptance is a very powerful thing. I accept that I can't change a lot in the world. I don't have that magic wand. I don't have the Superman cape where I could sort all the problems of the world out. What I can do is number one, look after myself, control myself, change what I have to change for me, and then help other people change what they want to change. And that is the limit of my abilities, the limit of my ambition. But making a contribution, that's I'd be making a contribution in whatever way if I hadn't been a coach, if I wasn't a coach.
I love it. I love that that coaching has kind of helped you kind of home in on your purpose in life, which is,
Well, that's a very good
really,
point. Purpose, yeah.
yeah,
Eh, If you were to ask somebody what's your purpose in life, that's a cracker because they'll sit, uh, right, and you have to kind of dig deep down and say, okay, I have a purpose. I am here for a purpose, right?
yeah,
So if you're talking about God put me here for a purpose, right? And if I
yeah.
was a God-fearing man, I would say God put me here for the purpose of helping other people.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I was just talking to somebody yesterday, and they were talking about how they were still trying to find their purpose, but they had such a passion about finding it. So it's okay if you don't have your purpose
Yeah,
yet, but if you, as long as you're looking for it, because and it's just
it will
it,
come. It will come to you.
yeah, it will come, absolutely. I have one final question to ask you that it's a little frivolous, but because you spent so much time in law enforcement, I was just love when I'm watching shows and I wonder how authentic they are. Do you ever watch like a TV show or a movie and you just as a former law enforcement for so many years, do you just shake your head and go,
Oh,
that's not the way it is?
all the time. All the time.
Is there anything that you've ever watched and you've gone, that is what it's like. That is authentic.
Yeah, yeah. There are certain shows I watch. They tend to be, this is a more led by a cerebral detective, a detective who thinks out the box, not just going by the rules in the road. I also um, like shows like Dirty Harry, right? Where
Oh,
right he gets the bad guy and that's it, finished, right?
yeah.
Do you feel lucky, punk? Right, bang, right.
Yeah.
A man's got to know his limitations, then he shoots them, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like, I mean, I don't have a messiah complex. I'm not a knight in shining armor. Um, the unfairness thing grates with me, but only up to
Yeah.
the point where I say I can't change that. So I do like cop shows which show cops as vulnerable, as flawed human beings,
Yeah.
as human, right? Instead of the, where they're, perfect and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, although those Dirty Harry movies, there is something about just pure justice sometimes, just
Justice, yes. But
somehow make it.
the justice and what's right aren't
Yeah,
necessarily the same things, because I can confess in my early years as a police officer, we got things done, right?
yeah,
We got we got we did what was right. It might not have been just, it might not have been
yeah,
actually legal uh, back in the day, but we had this sense of what's right and what's wrong, and that was the guiding light. Was we'll do the right thing. If that meant, bending a couple of rules, we were comfortable with that, right?
yeah,
The bad guys got the jail, right, and the good people, the populace, were protected, right, and that's all I'm
yeah,
going to say. Otherwise, I'll perjure myself.
yeah. It's funny. My husband and I always laugh. Well, really, mostly my husband. So he had a car accident in 2011, and he had barely a scratch on him, but he had a pretty good concussion because your brain can slosh around and you can get a concussion and not have a bump. And he was in the hospital for 4 days, and he always laughs at some of the cop shows where they're chasing somebody and they get in a really bad T-bone crash, and then the person just starts running away, and or the superheroes, they just keep fighting, and I'm sure there's probably an adrenaline factor to that, but he always laughs and he says, I was in a crash like that and I couldn't even, and I was unconscious. So, oh, the
Well,
reality
I
of
think
it.
you temper the like cop shows, like most shows. They're entertainment, right? They're
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
they're
yeah,
there to engage the audience. So if they have to be a bit flexible with the truth
yeah.
of the characters, fair enough. But
You have to suspend disbelief a little bit
suspend
sometimes. Yeah.
disbelief, right?
All right. So, folks out there who are listening, first of all, thank you so much for joining up. I always love to see people in the comments and the engagement. We are going to be wrapping up in a few minutes here. So, factoring for the delay, if you have any final thoughts or questions for Mr. Willie Nicol, please put them in the comments. If we don't get to them, we'll get to them after the fact. But, Willie, before we do wrap up, what do you want our listeners to know? Do you have anything coming up, and what's the best way to get in touch with you? And I think I have some of your links too. We'll put
Yeah.
everything in the comments.
Okay. There's my website. I'm on LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I have a. You can download my um, stress management guide. Uh, I am well about to launch a 3-day challenge,
Ooh,
which is called Get Your Mojo Back. And I use the word mojo because that was one of my first clients' problems. He lost his mojo. And I said that to him, and he said, you're quite right. I've lost my mojo. And I've kept that. No one can describe what mojo is. You can't walk into Walmart and buy a jar
mm-mm,
of mojo.
no,
Or there. But you sure as hell know when you don't have it. Right? So I, with my lovely marketer, Stephen, I've come up with this idea. Let's do a 3-day challenge. Let's challenge people to do something each day for 3 days and see what happens at the end of it. So I've written a program. Well, I and my AI companion have written a program, which hopefully will be forthcoming in the not too distant future, designed to help people get their mojo back or start the journey to get their life back on track, get their mojo back, and essentially just feel better.
Awesome. Well, we'll put all your information there. You guys connect with Willie and keep your eye out for that. And I know that you had the I think it's breakthecycleworksheet.com is for your free worksheet. So
It's the full it's break the cycle of stress and rediscover your mojo. But that is something that Stephen and I have formulated, right? So, are you stressed just now? Yes or no? If you are stressed, what are your causes of stress? What are your stressors? How do you manage them currently? Would you consider doing A, B, and C? So it's a guide, right? I'm quite proud of it, right? He's
yeah,
To be fair, I talked to him yesterday. He's in the process of revamping it, so you whether you get the old version or the new version anyway. Um, but it's hopefully something that will help people think, stress is natural, right? I'm
yeah,
stressed. Yeah, don't beat yourself up, right? But
yeah,
if it gets to chronic stress, perpetual stress, the mental and physical um, ramifications of that are never ever good. So if it
yeah.
helps anyone reduce their stress levels, it's all good.
From somebody who knows.
Yes.
Well, Willie, thank you so much. I said at the beginning, I've been just so looking forward to this ever since we met in the Founders Network on a networking call. So those of you out there who are poo-pooing networking calls, you meet so many awesome people. I just love your candor and your transparency and your values so aligned. I just love it. Thank you so much for sharing and being a part of the Thirsty Professional.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Beth, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Awesome. All right. So for all of you listeners and viewers out there, I just want to give you real quick, who we've got coming up next in the next few weeks. So next week, my guest is going to be Jyotsna Hoffman. She is a success mindset coach, rapid transformation therapist, hypnotherapist. I met her in a business mindset course, and she has been rocking her business. So look forward to that. On March 28th, Doris Walsh, who joined us today here in the audience, another Founders Network find for me, and I think probably for Willie too. Doris is the founder of Happy Bunny Coaching, and she helps high achieving, career driven parents experiencing overwhelm and guilt. And she's also a supporter of this live. She shows up a lot, and I just love her, and she's a total badass. And then kicking off April on the 4th, I'll be joined by Joseph Cope. So Joseph is so cool. He is an empathy expert. He's a keynote speaker, corporate workshop facilitator, personal empathy coach. He is full of fire, tons of fun, and I don't even know what we're going to be talking about because we could talk about anything. So I hope you guys will join us for some of those upcoming episodes. Thank you again, Willie. If anybody out there is watching on LinkedIn, please connect with Willie if you're not already, and myself, of course. And if you're on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Any additional questions or comments, leave them in the comments or send us a DM if you don't get to them during the show. And then congratulate yourself for getting real about your career, your purpose, and your passion. So now, Miss Hattie Arbuckle, Willie Nicol, and myself are going to now bid you a fond farewell. Take it easy, and happy St. Patty's Day to all of those who separate. So